Hi there, welcome to Boxing Deep Dive. I'm Lyndon Hosking, and as always, great to have you along for another episode of Dream Fights. This is where we match two fighters from the past against a fighter from the present, or vice versa, and break it all down and reveal who we think wins and why. It's always a fun episode, I will say. There's always plenty of different views. We get a lot of feedback from you guys out there, which is very much appreciated. Some good, some bad. But we love getting the feedback. This is why we do it, to create a conversation. I'm joined in this episode, as always, by Grant Tassie Brown and Mike Altamura. How are we, guys?
Good, thanks, Lyndon.
It's always a good one, isn't it, Mike? You know, I think I think we've discussed it in the past. It's always great to just bring different fighters to light of the modern age type of fans and really evoke some discussion and obviously encourage a lot of these people to go back and actually look them up on YouTube and do their own research.
It's great because we get to compare eras. We get to, sometimes the guys are in the same era, but they might not have ever had an opportunity to face each other. So I know, like previous editions we've had, like Foreman and Larry Holmes and fights like that, just to me are intriguing. You know, I know Tassie doesn't like some of my picks previously on this program, but even like the Aussie one we did a while back with Troy Waters and Tim Tszyu.
They had a good response.
You know, there's people that from the classic side that might not be so familiar with Tszyu, and then there's people, modern fans, that aren't quite familiar with Troy Waters' legacy. So it gives them a way to be enlightened about both guys and to at least have our input on where their skill sets may lay. And I think that Tassie's come to us with another cracking choice today, I've got to say.
Well, Tassie, you've got a smile on your face there. You go ahead.
I love Mike Altamura. Mike Altamura is one of my dearest friends in the world. Not in boxing, outside of boxing. We're brothers for life. But I must admit, he made most of our viewers fall asleep the night he done McGuigan versus Finnick. That was just for sleeping pills. But let's move forward.
All right, well, Tassie, it's up to you. We're going to get you to reveal who you tipped this week. It's a ripper. Who you got?
It's an all-Mexican affair. It's Salvador Sanchez versus Marco Antonio Barrera.
What a fight. And Mike, this is, you talk about a dream fight. This is a great one, isn't it?
Two guys that peaked exceptionally early. Of course, Sanchez, ill-fated death. We never got to see possibly the absolute best of him, but a world champion in his very early 20s and had just a natural relaxation from probably 20, 25 fights into his career when he was 18, 19 years of age. He had that relaxation of a 30-year-old veteran, and Barrera, again, teenage sensation, turned pro in his mid-teens and, again, was world champion by, I think it was 20 or 21 years of age, something like that. And I think this is a really good matchup because people remember the offense of both these guys, especially Sanchez, but both of them are real crafty defensively too. They've got a lot of underrated tactics and techniques.
All right, well, before we get Tassie to set the scene for this dream fight, we're going to go to the poll from last week. As you can remember, it was Julio Cesar Chavez and Gervonta Davis. I will say before I put the poll up here, I had a lot of comments, whether through Facebook or YouTube or Instagram or whatever it might be, because it actually had a lot of traction. I think we're up to about 1,500 views so far and climbing. It's sort of peaked in the last couple of days. Pretty much insulted that we'd had the nerve to put these two guys in the ring together at this stage, but the poll, surprisingly, here it is here, Chavez 77%, Davis 23%, which is probably not a massive surprise, but Mike, I must admit I was surprised that he actually got so many votes as he did.
Well, what's Tassie's go-to line on here always?
Yeah, no shit about boxing. That's what he tells me all the time. So
it's like I always say, it's
100%.
It's the familiarity of what fans have. So a lot of fans might be exceptionally high on Davis. I think Davis is still going through the process of his career. And as for the fact that it's done 1,500 plus views, see, it was a good choice I made matching these eras because I could have maybe picked two guys, one that's got a more complete resume that could test and maybe push Chavez to the limit, but it wouldn't have that notoriety or that fandom. Whereas I figured Davis is going to be an interesting one because a lot of people are going to have a very skewed perspective of where they factor in his career is.
Yeah. And Taz, it's an interesting one because sometimes, we put the videos up and sometimes they hit and sometimes they don't. This obviously is hitting. I'm sure, no doubt the way it's climbing, it's going to go really well. I mean, the biggest one we've had was, I think, was it Pacquiao and Zhu, I think it was. I think we're up to 26 or 27,000 views or something at the moment. And others that'll only have a few hundred. But either way, it definitely hits the heartstring of a few people out there. And sometimes all it takes is to go a little bit viral and you get all these international people. I had a lot of people berating me in Spanish. I've had to translate. So, but anyway, this is why we do it. But just on this one, Tassie, Mike's obviously touched on a little bit. What made you come up with this one about putting these two guys together?
Just two all-time greats, and I like to feature a lot of the smaller guys. Like featherweight division's been a cracking division. The Mexicans at the bantamweight featherweight division, or bantamweight, featherweight, super featherweight have been they're sort of dominated for many years. And Salvador Sanchez, just we never know how great he was going to be, but he already made his mark as a legend and a Hall of Famer. And I think he shared Boxer of the Year with Sugar Ray Leonard in the early '80s, and then Marco Antonio Barrera, more of a modern day great, super bantam, featherweight, and then just both great fighters, and I've got this fight at featherweight, at both at their best, and what a cracking fight it would have been.
All right, let's get into the records of both guys. Salvador Sanchez, the late, great Mexican legend, 44-1-1, 32 KOs. Only won the one world title, WBC featherweight title. That was back in the days when one world title meant the world. It wasn't about the amount of belts you had. It was the actual belt that you did have, and WBC was it back then. He had 9 successful defences. You can see there he had the 2 wins over Danny Little Red Lopez. You can see there Ruben Castillo, Juan Laporte, very underrated fighter over the years. Wilfredo Gomez in a massive super fight back in the day. Pat Cowdell from England, Rocky Garcia, and Azuma Nelson, who was just starting his legacy back then, and the 1991 International Boxing Hall of Fame inductee. But Mike, what was he, 23 years old? It's just an absolute tragedy. I think he actually had 46 fights in that time. It's just the tragic thing of what he could have actually gone on and achieved in that time for the rest of his career. It's just shocking.
One thing is as well, you just assume that his body would have physically matured over the next few years. So there was realistically the possibility that he would have been fighting maybe the likes of Hector Camacho Sr., Julio Cesar Chavez. Not suggesting we do that in a dream match, by the way, Taz.
That would be great.
But there's the argument that possibly his best days were in front of him in spite of all those legends he already had on his record. And for a lot of people that had never seen him, you're getting a look at him here, and he was just a deceiving puncher because you can see he's standing right in front of his opponents, but just so relaxed. He would create great torque with his body, bent really well at the waist, and created subtle angles without winding up his punches.
And Tassie, to think, as I said, he was only 23 years old in 1982. Another featherweight that we know pretty well around that time, one and only, of course, Jeff Fennick. What year did he win the WBC title? I think it was at 89. So Sanchez would have only been 30 back then. What sort of fight would that have been as well?
Would have been an absolute cracker. Would have been amazing. I mean, but the wins over Juan Laporte, who became WBC champion after he lost to Sanchez. The great biggest punch in Puerto Rican probably ever, Wilfredo Gomez. I mean, that was just an amazing fight, between two legends, and he went down and dominated for a long time. And then you've got Azuma Nelson, who was young, but look what Azuma Nelson done after the loss to Salvador, become a Hall of Famer and WBC champion. So as I said, I'm always big, I know Mikey's too, on what you do after a loss. These guys are going on to become champions. So that just shows how great Salvador Sanchez was, even though it was all very early days because he wasn't with us as long as he should have been.
And Mike, I know
Yeah,
you.
there's the Azuma stoppage there.
Oh, sorry, mate. What was that?
There's the Azuma stoppage there.
Yeah, yeah. Now, Mike, I know you probably already know this, but I wasn't aware until I went through his record that he actually fought Felix Trinidad Sr.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, Tito Sr. took a beating off of Sanchez.
Yeah,
No
fifth
surprise
round,
there.
1979. But it was a unique fighter, wasn't he, Mike? Because he was obviously Mexican, but he sort of fought like the normal Mexican, but he didn't, did he? I mean, he was a tall sort of guy. You would probably see more of as a boxer, but he liked to punch. But you know what I mean? He sort of fought like a Mexican, but he didn't. If that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
He always had his guard ready. Like I said before, when you watch him close, you just see how well he'd bend at the waist, and he'd create a false illusion that he was there to be hit, but he would just a little turn either side, get himself out of range, and he was always in position to counter back. And think that's a really tough opponent to face when they got dynamite in both hands. And then you look at his record; he stopped Lopez late twice. He stopped Azuma Nelson in the 15th round. His power was there from round 1 to round 15. He wasn't necessarily a big one-punch knockout artist, but he was an accumulator that would just wear you out, bust you up, and then gradually you get to a point where just, all the energy falls out of your soul, so to speak.
Yeah, and Tassie, when I say he's not like a Mexican fighter, one thing that was definitely Mexican, the unbelievable stamina that he had, but the way he just went through the gears. So as the rounds went on, hit the pace, he'd go from one gear to second gear to third. Most Mexicans, they don't go in reverse. It's always, they start at 1 and they finish in 5, and that's why you can see so many late round knockouts along the journey.
Yeah, he didn't fight on the phone, but like a lot of Mexicans, and he's a bit like Juan Manuel Marquez, really, I think, more than a lot of other Mexicans.
Yep.
More than a Chavez. Probably more like a Marquez, So
more of a matador type of fighter, wasn't he?
100%. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Right, let's get on to his opponent, Marco Antonio Barrera, 67-7, 44 KOs. You can see there 3 times WBO Super Bantamweight champion at 95, 98, 2000, WBC Featherweight champion in 02, WBC Super Featherweight champion in 04, and IBF Super Featherweight in 2005. You can see the big wins there. Decisions over there, including Prince Nassim Hamed, Eric Morales, now Kevin Kelly, Johnny Tapia, and of course our man Robbie Peden in 2005, and he was inducted into the 2017 International Boxing Hall of Fame. So, Mike, tell us a little about the Marco Antonio Barrera career. I mean, obviously 74 fights, a little bit up and down in stages, but overall just a great career.
He was a teenage prodigy that just hit every expectation and then excelled beyond that. And very rarely do you see that. And even, like you said, he had some bumps in the road. He struggled at times with guys with really fast hands, slicksters, good hand speed. And that's probably what you attribute to the 2 losses to Junior Jones. But what come out of that was a groundswell of people saying he was overrated, he was never anything, and things of that nature. And then he come back and had the Fight of the Year contender in 2000 with Eric Morales, which most people believe he won.
Yep.
And then, of course, come the year, was it the year after?
Year after, yeah.
And right here, you see completely embarrassing and schooling Prince Nazim Hamed. And that set up the next trajectory for his career. Then he had the shock stoppage loss to Pacquiao. Again, people read him off time and again, and he just kept coming back and kept proving them wrong. He was a guy that once he hit the elite level, once he became a world champion, he never really stepped back. And that's where 67-7, you've got to respect those numbers because he was fighting elite opposition pretty much for his last 40 bouts.
Well, you see there, Tassie, after like he obviously beat Prince Nassim, he had wins over Eric Morales, Johnny Tapia, Kevin Kelly. Then he lost to Manny Pacquiao, but throw in Paulie Ayala there. Another win over Eric Morales, and then Bomber Peden. So the resume is great, isn't it? I mean, he had 2 wins over Rocky Juarez, lost to Juan Manuel Marquez and Pacquiao again, but and you can't really count the later fights in his career, obviously, but yeah, it's just another typical Mexican legend who just fought everybody, won a few, lost a few, but was never in a bad fight.
No, mate, I pretty much followed Barrera's career most of the I seen him fight early on. I think on Forum Fight Night, or I think it was Fight Night at the Forum or USA Fight Night. I saw a lot of his early fights, and he was one guy that I really followed his whole career. Big fan. I liked Barrera more than I did Morales. He was either one or the other. You either Morales or a Barrera fan. I was more a Barrera fan. Great fighter, made some great wins. As I said, he obviously beat the great, Kennedy McKinney, gold medalist at Olympic Games, and wins over Rocky Juarez, another good American Olympian. Great fights of Eric Morales, the trilogy, and mate. Look, he fought everyone. Johnny Tapia, Enrique Sanchez, the win over Naz, obviously. Jesus Saled, so many great fighters he beat, and even the ones that he lost, like Mike said, most of the time he bounced back.
All right, well, that's our two combatants tonight, Salvador Sanchez and Marco Turno Barrera. I'll get it right. My mind's off on other things tonight. Tazzy, was your pick, so we're going to let you go first. The big question, who wins and why?
Yeah, look, it's a great fight. I mean, two of the greatest of all time, two of the best featherweights of all time, two of the greatest Mexicans of all time. Just a great matchup. But I feel, even though we didn't see the best of him probably, I think Salvador Sanchez would, from what I seen, from what he was and what he could have been, I think he has the tools to beat Barrera. I mean, Barrera's lost to Junior Jones, Eric Morales, Juan Manuel Marquez, obviously the loss to the Pacquiao. I mean, there's nothing bad about them because they're great fighters, but I mean, I think Salvador had a bit more tricks in his sleeve than Barrera, and I'll tip Salvador Sanchez on points.
On points, and I'm assuming it probably would have been over 15 rounds. So I don't think it would have mattered whether it was 12 or 15. Barrera would have had more than enough to go the extra 3, you would think. So either way, unanimous decision from Tazzy. Mike, up to you.
The interesting part is both guys kind of struggled at times with nifty, speedy fighters. I know that Sanchez had an absolute nightmare against Pat Ford from Guyana. Possibly he just completely underestimated him, but nevertheless, that was an exceptionally tight fight. He had trouble with Laporte's guard, but one Laporte could make anybody look bad on the right night. He was a terrific fighter, crafty tactician, only stopped once in like a 60-fight career. So I look at that factor and I just try to figure out how the styles marry up better, marry up best. And I think that Sanchez just had a few more intangibles, that relaxed style where he wouldn't just get drawn into a rumble with Barrera, whereas Barrera, I think, would need to drag him into a firefight and a tear-up to get the better of him. I just see Sanchez having enough craft and enough ring guile to outbox him and edge enough rounds. It'll be close. It'll be like 9 rounds to 6, might even be 8-7 or that, but I just can't see Barrera finding a way just to overcome that little bit of a hurdle, which was, to me, just a natural speed difference in ring craft. I think that Sanchez just had a few more wrinkles in his game.
All right, so that's 2 for Sanchez. Well, for the second week in a row, guys, I'm going to make it a trilogy. I think I agree 100% with both you guys, especially Mike, in that I think that Barrera would really, it would be a tough fight. It would be close. I'm picking even 8 rounds to 7, like you said. I think Barrera just had that style. He would just keep coming. But I just think the class of Sanchez, just the ability to stick to the plan no matter what. He rarely got flustered. He always stuck to what made him successful. Barrera could get a little bit emotional sometimes. So I think there'd be lots of bombs thrown. But I think Sanchez's ring craft, his IQ, would be enough to keep Barrera at bay. And even though it would be very, very close, I think Sanchez gets the job done in a close but unanimous decision. So whether that's 12 or 15. So that's the way I see it. So that's a clean sweep again, guys. We've got to stop doing this. We're all thinking too much alike. I've got a feeling my pick for next week might just get us on a little bit different level, but we'll see how we go. But Tazzy, that's a great pick tonight. Before we go, I'm just going to give you my one for next week. I'm going to go for what I think is the holy grail of lightweight matchups. Roberto Duran against Pernell Whitaker. We've been looking at this fight for a long, long time.
Wow.
Well, now we're going to throw it out there.
No.
Yeah, I know it's a tough one. It's been hanging out there for a while. I'm surprised that no one's taken it yet. But the great Roberto Duran against the late great Pernell Sweet Pea Whitaker. So that'll be next week. So have a good think about that, boys, and look forward to catching up then.
Done.
Thanks, boys.
Thanks,
See you
fellas.
next time.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.